Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today I'm going to be doing Biden's best case scenario for the 2024 presidential election. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I did one for Trump, so I only thought it was fair to do one for President Biden. But before we get started with the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit the post notification bell, and make sure to follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And so if we look at the current polling aggregate right now, it has Donald Trump up at 1 point in the national aggregate. If we look at 2012, which has underestimated incumbents before, especially Barack Obama, and as well, historically, incumbents have underperformed, or excuse me, have overperformed polling data the past couple of cycles. Bush did, Obama did, and Trump did. So if we were to apply that same concept to Biden, theoretically speaking, if Biden were to outperform the polls by a couple of points, if we were to kind of do that math from 2012, 1 point minus 3.9, or I believe it's a 2.8 miss, excuse me, that ends up becoming a net minus 1.8 national environment, which would be about a point. I currently have the national environment at 4.5 percentage points. But for the sake of the video, we're going to put the popular vote at minus 2.5 for Biden's best case scenario. As for the fact that more than likely he won't be able to reach that minus 4.5 aggregate from 2020 just due to Hispanic and African American trends, as well as the fact that right now Biden has a historically low approval rating for an incumbent president. He's currently sitting on minus 15.3. He's more unpopular than Clinton. So to assume that he may even be able to outperform Clinton's national popular vote lead is pretty crazy. The only reason why he might be able to do it is because of the fact that he has the incumbency. So let's say for the sake of the video, he wins the popular vote by 3, and we're going to be going through each state and kind of looking at the electoral map based off of that fact. And so as of right now, Donald Trump would still be winning all of these Republican states by pretty good margins, I'd suspect. He'd still be doing pretty well in some of these safe Republican states. You know, they have trended to the right mostly throughout, the 21st century. And I believe that Trump would still be able to trend them a tiny bit to the right in this scenario. I think Biden would win California by a safe margin, as well as Oregon and Washington. I also think Colorado will be a significantly Democratic state in this scenario. I think that Iowa and Ohio would be likely Republican in this case. If we check for South Carolina, South Carolina is actually right below the safe margin at this point in time. Kansas, I believe, is right above the safe margin. So Trump even makes a little bit of gains as well. If you look at Texas, it is a 7 point win for the incumbent or for the former president. And if we look at the state of Florida, it is a 7 point victory. It seems like Trump would make minor gains from 2020 in Texas, but would make huge shifts in Florida, more than likely flipping Miami-Dade by 1 to 2 points in this scenario and improving in some of the panhandle area as well as some rural areas, more than likely giving him a high single-digit lead in the state. Texas being a 7 point win. The state will trend to the left as of right now. That is projected from the model. However, he still ends up winning it by 7 points, not as much as 2016, but definitely higher than 2020. If we were to keep going, we could see that some of these states would be safe Democrat, except for the state of New Jersey. New Jersey, the polling is shifting the state significantly closer, so there may actually be a way for New Jersey to end up being a likely state. Delaware could be, but for the sake of the video, we're going to be putting it safe. Maine's first would be safe, with the Maine's second congressional district being likely, and Maine at large being a likely Democratic state. Same thing for New Hampshire. So the electorate would look pretty similar to 2020. At that, Nebraska second would still be a 5.5 percentage point victory. However, if you go to Illinois, what's actually funny is that it does fall below a 15-point victory. So it seems like even though President Biden would still maintain a pretty high lead, compared to his approval rating, like if he were to win the popular vote by 3, that would still be kind of impressive considering his approval rating. However, right now he would still make some losses in Illinois, and I believe in Colorado he'd actually do like a point and a half worse in the state. He'd do a little bit worse in Colorado, as well as in a state like Maine. More than likely he probably ends up losing ground there just a tiny bit as well. And so that is definitely a problem for him. Even in a best case scenario, he is still making some losses in some states. Virginia is an 8.3 percentage point victory compared to 2020 as of right now, which puts his campaign in jeopardy. However, New York is actually a state that's going to still be in the safe Democratic column. That puts the state at a safe margin, a 19-point victory for Biden, but he still makes there's still some losses there. So we come down to the traditional swing states. If we look at the state of New Mexico, which I can find right here, it is an 8-point win for the incumbent president, which is 2 points less than what it was in 2020. However, we can see that the map is looking pretty similar to 2020. Even Alaska is a likely margin of victory. And so, based out of the toss up states that are pretty much left, if we look at Minnesota, it is exactly a 5.1 percentage point victory. And so, we kind of have a similar electorate to 2020 for the most part. If you look at this, Colorado, New Mexico likely, Minnesota likely, New Hampshire, Virginia likely. These states are pretty much likely, except for Kansas. That is the only state that moves up, and Florida becomes a little bit more Republican, with the first district in Nebraska becoming safe. And so it's a very similar electorate to 2020, but we are basically dealing with the same thing. Now, the popular vote could depend on how big the margins are some of these states. And however, even though, Trump is shown to be winning Arizona in this scenario, winning Michigan, even winning Georgia, winning Nevada, winning Pennsylvania and Wisconsin by single digit leads, I'm still going to give some leeway for Biden to really talk about what could potentially happen in a scenario like this. Now, what's been happening is that Republican voters and nationwide, and it's a lot of low propensity voters, have not trusted the government enough in order to go out and cast their ballot for President Trump in November. Now, I do understand the major concerns about this. However, it is important for if people want Trump to really win, they're going to have to get the turnout necessary in order to be able to do so. I mean, if Biden has all the votes he needs to win, and so does Trump. They both have the votes they need to win. It's just a turnout game. And Democrats have a very, very strong turnout game. It's just a truth. So even if Biden is, significantly unpopular, he will still get decent turnout for having a 40% approval rating because of the fact that due to political polarization and also due to the fact that Democrats' ground game is significantly better than Republicans in some cases, that might potentially spell a problem for President Trump if he does not get the base turnout that he needs. Now, I think no matter what, he would still win North Carolina. I think he would hold on to it. He would definitely improve in the state no matter what. I think no matter what happens, he makes gains in North Carolina. More than likely, the minimum victory is probably like a 1.6 and upwards. He would still make some gains in the state, even if the popular vote is the same as 2020. Now, for the states that I think Biden's would probably end up winning in a best case scenario, I definitely see him winning Arizona by a couple points. If you see the shift in Maricopa, the county shifted by about 5 percentage points to the left from 2016 to 2020. And if you look at the midterms, they weren't necessarily the best outcomes for, for Republicans. And even though, guys, here's the thing. Let's say, okay, yeah, fine, the electorate for a midterm is not the same as the presidential, but the Maricopa shift was bigger than we expected. And if people keep pouring in here and illegal aliens, potentially vote in the next election in huge droves, which I'm not 100% certain if that is the case, but if that does actually become a major issue, we may in fact see Arizona also become a problem. Another thing that could energize Democrats is if abortion ends up becoming a major thing. And that's also on top of Republicans not turning out, Trump's messaging being a little bit off, which I don't think he will. I think this may not even happen, but I have to be fair and show, okay, if I did Trump's best case scenario, I have to do Biden's best case. And I think in a best case scenario, Biden ends up winning Arizona by a couple points. I think he does. I think he would win it by 2 to 3 points in a best case scenario. I think Nevada, in a best case scenario for Biden, does vote for him by like a point, even though Hispanic gains would be made nationwide. I think that Nevada has been a pretty reliably Democratic state since 2008. And in a best case scenario, I can't just see him losing the state overall. Now, good news for Trump, I think no matter what happens, even in a best case scenario for Biden, I think Trump beats him in Georgia because literally, if we were to go to the election shuffler, look how small it is. Look, literally, if we were to go to the election shuffler and go to Georgia, right? And you literally selected all of the Atlanta area counties and even some of the ones on the outside, right? If you were to select some of the ones surrounding it too, like some of the exurban counties as well, let's say we kind of selected this whole area and we literally just made it 1 point more Republican, Trump ends up winning the state by the same margin Biden won it by last time. Literally, if you shift the city area by a single point, he ends up winning the state. And so at that point, I'd say, yeah, it's almost impossible for Biden to be winning Georgia. I'd say out of all the states, Biden is basically DOA in Georgia. I think he would basically be DOA there. I think he's going to have a major trouble. He's going to have a pretty hard time to win this. He's gonna have a pretty hard time winning Georgia. And I think even in a best case scenario, I still don't think he even gets it. So Trump's floor is 251 electoral votes. And the problem for Biden is if Trump wins Pennsylvania, it's game over. It is literally game over. And Pennsylvania has been trending to the right on the national level as well. So that's also a major issue for him too. That's a major issue for Biden. Pennsylvania could easily, trend to the right this next coming cycle. And if that were to happen, Trump has the chance to win it and it's game over for Biden, even in a best case scenario. However, here's the thing, the Rust Belt has been considerably Democratic since the 1990s. And so, really, if Trump's scenario here in 2016 really was a major fluke, you could say, okay, if Biden kind of holds on to some African American support just enough, he may be able to win Michigan by like 1.3, 1.4%. I'd say he probably does. That's basically where he'd probably end up being in a best case scenario. He probably does win Michigan by a lean margin at that. Now, the last two states are Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I think if Pennsylvania goes blue, I think it's a major, major close state. I think it'll be down to the wire. I think Trump's going to make gains in the Philadelphia area by a couple points. Even if Biden maintains most of his base, I think he is going to make gains there because Trump still made gains in Philadelphia proper in 2020. And I think Biden will probably lose gain in Erie, lose some ground over here, but not enough for him to lose it. So more than likely, this would be like a 0.2, 0.3 percentage point win for Biden. And in terms of Wisconsin, it's really hard to gauge what would happen in Wisconsin. But assuming that Trump would make some gains with white working class voters in Iowa, like currently the model, if you were to actually shift this back to like a 4.5 percentage point victory, if you were to shift this back, it actually shows Arizona being a tilt margin, shows Georgia being lean Democratic. It shows Michigan being a 1.3 victory. Like I said, Nevada would be 1.1, which is what I've been saying. North Carolina 1.6, literally right on the money. Texas would be a bit closer, but I don't think it would be likely just because of the border. And Wisconsin is a 0.4 victory. So even in a scenario where Biden in the model is winning by 4.5, Trump still wins Wisconsin even before Georgia, which I find pretty interesting that would be the case. Wisconsin for a Biden best case scenario is extremely hard to predict. But if I had a gun to my head and I said, okay, what way would I have to put in a best case? I'd probably have to give it to Biden just because of the fact the Rust Belt always tends to vote together. Biden, has won it twice as the VP before with Obama. And if Biden would hold on to most of his coalition from 2020, I'd suspect that he more than likely would end up holding Wisconsin as well. Now, Wisconsin, it would be really close. It would literally be within 5,000 votes, maybe even less than that. It would be extremely close. I think it'd be like a 0.1 percentage point victory for Biden, maybe even less than that. It may be like a 0.005 percentage point win for Biden. It would be down to the wire in this state. However, more than likely, I'd see he would end up winning it in a best case scenario. So can Biden theoretically win? Yes. Unfortunately, due to political polarization and the fact that a lot of the elections are now just turnout games, I think Biden can still win. However, no matter what, he will probably end up underperforming 2020. And Wisconsin could honestly go either way. Trump could even still win it in Biden's best case scenario. And that would probably make Biden's best case scenario look a lot less strong. He would only be at 277. At that point, Trump could just win Arizona and just win the election at that point. However, I think Nevada votes to the right of Arizona this cycle if Biden were to get his best case scenario. Now, you can see that Pennsylvania was voting to the right of Nevada and Arizona in this case. So if Pennsylvania were to somehow, vote Republican in this scenario, Trump could theoretically still win the election, actually. A lot of people actually had this map happening some time ago. I also think a scenario that would be pretty underrated is Trump winning the Rust Belt but not winning, Nevada and Arizona. And the only reason why I say that is because usually if one state in the Rust Belt is voting a certain way, then they all have to go, because the Rust Belt's been voting together ever since the 1990s. And so my fundamentals, which I've talked about on a live stream before, is that usually if I have one state going a certain way, they would probably end up all going the same. So this is a scenario that could happen where Trump wins 295 but doesn't win Nevada or Arizona. That could potentially happen, if we get a similar electorate to 2020. And so that is basically it, guys. This is the best case scenario for Biden. He would win 287 electoral votes to Trump's 251 electoral votes. Again, guys, this is not my official prediction. This is not me, trying to doom. This is not me trying to be like, oh my God, like, I love Biden. That's not what this is. This is me showing you this is the most realistic best case scenario for Biden. If Biden has a perfect night, he can still win the election, and it's up to you guys to make the difference, to go vote and not make this happen. If you don't want this to happen, if you do, it is what it is, then you might as well go ahead. But if you don't want this to happen, make sure to go vote, make sure to register early, make sure to go ahead, go register early, make sure you go vote early in person, because also too, guys, if the weather on election day for whatever reason in your area is not good, especially that we're approaching winter and the weather seems to be a little bit crazy the past 2 years, that might be a potential problem if you're going to be waiting in line for a couple hours to vote. So if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit the post notification bell, and make sure to follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And I hope to see you guys very, very soon.